All right, hey everybody. This is going to be a video explaining all the upgrades to the Indie Advocates Network. The Comic Initiative is going to be a place where we are going to try to mentor new creators. We're going to be putting on panels throughout the United States and hopefully the world at one point, and you'll be able to see this panel. We're going to pick two or three that are literally going to travel the United States, and we're going to have different criteria for it. Chuck, who's with me on the program right now, of course, is going to be part of it and expanding it into Texas. We're going to be talking about that in a few days, and it's about bringing creators together to build a community that brings together the territories, because right now we're much like wrestling in the 80s. We're very territorial based in the indie comics environment. We're going to try to defeat that in 2020 and build a community of people that spiderweb the country and then the world. Right, Chuck?
Dang right.
And we were just talking about very passionately about the importance of the idea that comic books are not storyboards, guys. And the fact that people have equated comic books to storyboards means there needs to be a comic initiative. We have to use comics to open minds and culture, and that's why that's our anagram. And we're also doing something huge this year, Chuck. And you know about this. Greaticon. Greaticon is going to be here. It's just you're an outsider from this. There's a lot of stuff that's new. You've only heard me kind of tease and talk about it. What are your thoughts on Greaticon? Because I know a lot of people are super nervous, and it took me an entire 2 years to figure out the perfect method to make everyone happy. What are your thoughts? Do you have any questions about it? Talk to me.
So, what I like about it, because I have seen you work on it over the years, and so what I've noticed about you is that you try things, and then what doesn't work, you manipulate and play with it, and try to make it work well. So, I'm actually excited because I feel like this idea has now had the chance to really brew and hopefully become what it's supposed to be, much like the awards. Actually, the awards, I've seen so many indie comic awards, and so far this one is going so much better than a lot of the other ones. So I'm expecting the same thing out of Greaticon.
And it's interesting because this invites conversations, and we're not just making it on our site. One of the things I listened to in over the last couple of years is, as amazing as Indie Advocates is, Indie Advocates a lot of times is equated with me or equated with ownership. People almost feel like they're intimidated by it, or they're even, to be honest, jealous about that site, and they don't want to put in because they think if they put more into it, it makes it more popular and takes away from them. I think having it on Facebook makes it a neutral territory. It brings us into the neutral zone. Do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I mean, I don't fully understand the whole why people are so worried about this kind of stuff. I've always found it rather silly, especially as someone who has worked as hard as I have for indie advocates and still very much kept my own brand. As you said, so many people are like afraid they'll get sucked in and they're just going to be indie advocates and they're not going to be their own thing. But I believe I've proven that that's not correct at all.
Yep. And it helps career. Everyone who's ever worked with indie advocates has seen an instant spike and we've talked about this, it helps people and it never requires anything. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with you and said, Chuck, you can't do that, or Chuck, this has to be on our site. We have never had conversations like that. It is always, hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to do this? Do you want your own show? Yeah. Do you want that? And if you say no, it's like, okay. Or if you're too busy, okay. It's never about, and I said this even with the comics initiative, we had some members who just weren't available. And that could be many reasons that they're not available to be part of it, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing. People get busy. And you know this from what you do, and I know this from what I do. It costs time. And some people don't have the time to give up because, like you'd said, other people have jobs, right?
Yeah.
They have other things going on, and you've struggled this year with timing because you have so many projects that you're constantly working on. As a matter of fact, you're one of the few people I can openly talk about the Independent Creator Awards because you're not a judge. You have nothing to do with it. You're just an outsider. And one of the reasons was, and I told Chuck this privately, and I'm sure he's not going to be upset I say it here,
No.
is because he's so involved with so many different comic books. It would be almost impossible to put him in a category he wasn't somehow had a hand in one way
Yeah.
or the other, or he hadn't worked with a creator. I think
Well,
he's
and originally we had discussed me being a judge, and that
Yeah.
was something that I was going to be, and then we realized, yeah, and you were very honest about it, and I was like, nope, you're absolutely right. And it's funny because even like when I do my own Chuck's Raw reviews, I don't review my own books, which means that there's a lot of books that I don't get to talk about because I had a hand in them.
Yeah, but I think as an editor, you should be able to get away with still reviewing it.
I mean, I could, but I'd feel like if I was calling anything out, first off, I'd be calling out my own stuff, but also because of how I do things, because the fact that Chuck's Raw Reviews is there to show what I feel to be good books, to then put books that I've been a part of and say, this is a good book. Well, yeah, of course I feel like it's a good book. I worked on it.
Yeah, and it is. I give you a lot of credit because you know me. A lot of times I step back away from things because I know that people could take it the wrong way, and I'm very conscious about that because of the work I do with indie advocates and advocate for other things. I am very careful about my footprint. Despite what most people think, we had started the debates, and me and you talked about this when we did debates in 2019. The debates were all about getting people to talk to each other again, because so many people had forgotten how to have conversations. And I almost made my page a safe zone for people. Not a safe space, but an actual safe zone, because people could actually have someone who will moderate other people and be like, don't talk to people that way, that's inappropriate. Have a thought, that's fine, facts are welcome, but don't badger people. And I think that's kind of important with our community right now, is that we start to remember that we're all human beings and we don't all have to get along. And me and you have talked about this in conversations with different groups and aspects. I don't have to like people to work with them. I don't have to like people to advocate for them. As a matter of fact, I advocate for people I don't get along with on a regular basis, because we're all humans and we all don't necessarily agree with each other's political idealisms or our religious idealisms, or even just we don't like each other as people, and that's okay. Just because we're a creator doesn't mean we have to get along with everyone, but we have to be honest and have some integrity. And that's what Gradacon really is going to be, an integrity grading system. And I warn people about this right now, and I'm going to warn them when they post, and it's in one of the posts right there up as the rules, because there are rules written for how to do this, and it's expect me to ask questions. It's on our actual, it's when you join the group. I literally put it as a condition to join in the group. Understand, I will ask questions of what you say, because I'm not going to let someone just come in and say something overly negative or overly positive without asking a few questions, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to know things. We want to know, because and this is it. As creators, me and Chuck want to know what the traffic was like, right?
Yes.
If you tell me it's such a perfect show, okay, what was the attendance? Oh, I don't know. Well, what were the people holding in their hands? Were there a lot of people with bags in their hands, or was it a great show for you? Did you talk to anyone else? And mind you, it's never a wrong answer to call something a great show for a person. And we've talked about this, me and Chuck. You've been at shows where it was horrible for you but good for other people, right?
Oh my goodness, yes. I had my first horrible show this year, and actually, at the time it felt terrible, but in retrospect, it felt good. It's something that I could learn from. I'm a poker player, an avid poker player, and one thing that anybody who studies poker often mentions and says is you don't learn anything from your winning hands. You learn from your losses.
Yep.
And so, because if you win, it could have just been luck. It could have been the right people, the right time, for a convention, all that kind of stuff. But if you lose, you know that something wrong happened. So what is that? And so that's kind of where Gradacon comes in. And sometimes it's not the convention, it's you, and you need to be honest.
Yep.
Like, I would honestly say that part of the issue with my big loss, the one con that went really bad for me, was me and what I had. It wasn't appropriate necessarily for that show, and cool, I know that now.
I know that feeling. But I mean, even this year when we met up at MegaCon, a lot of people, and I've never been unhonest about this, but there's a scrutiny that comes with being me for the advocate to the point where I started to actually hate being called the advocate because people had these expectations. And right around when I met up with Chuckett and we met in real life for the first time, we'd known each other for a few years at that point, right?
Yep.
And we finally got to meet in person. I was at the point where I almost didn't know how to be me anymore in public. And I was just coming out with the Indie Devil persona, and I'd been, let's be honest, bullied by people about the fetish content, or bullied by other creators who thought I was too loud because I had a big voice, and I'd let everything into my head. And Chuck just got to see me kind of just be like, F this. This is who I am. If you don't like it, go away. And that's right around the time the free hugs and spanks signs started to become a big thing, right? And I didn't realize how big it would be, but it was going to be huge in 2019. And I think that was one of the first places I'd actually had the newer sign, right?
Yeah, I was actually. So I believe that was the first place you had that. And I think we both learned an awful lot that weekend. That weekend was really, really good for... I actually remember the day because I remember that... I don't even know that I've told a lot of people this, but my wife and I had made it out to Florida only to find out that we had no money. All of our money had a check had gone through and basically put us into the negatives. So we had no way to get home. I had to make a certain amount of money, and I found this out Saturday morning. I had to make a certain amount of money so that we could get home. And I remember Saturday, the start of the day being so rough because I had to kind of change my outlook. And I had to get out of that depression of what the hell am I going to do? And it was funny because Rob was kind of in the same place where he very much was kind of trying to figure out who am I and how do I do this? And it was funny because we both kind of clicked at the same time. And all of a sudden, our booth became ridiculous. Like I sold probably in that last day and a half. I sold more in that last day and a half than I've probably sold in any other convention all the way through. And the two of us just took off. I felt like there was this really cool cathartic moment where we just knew it just happened.
No, I agree. It's like that moment where you realize you can't care as much. And I mean, you saw how bad my body was feeling. There was a point on Friday night I could barely stand anymore. I remember us being at dinner and you and Wendy were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'll be fine. I just need my body to shut down now. I just need to be able to rest for a little while because it takes a toll." And I don't think people realize that when you're going to these shows, and that's why I'm so critical of shows. A lot of creators, we get beat up doing this. Even healthy people feel horrible after shows. Because it's hours of talking. It's hours of... it's like trying to date dozens of people at the same time.
Yeah.
It's really what it is.
It's so funny because even as someone who 2 years ago was not doing conventions, I was like, why are these people whining? This is the life. This is exactly what you want to be doing. But no, what they don't realize is you are putting yourself out there and you need to be on your game the whole time. Because a lot of this stuff, especially indie comics, does not sell itself. I don't have that Marvel M in the corner of my comic that people can just see and go, oh yeah. I don't have characters that are instantly recognizable. So you are creating a brand awareness. You are selling people on something that they absolutely did not come there for.
Yep.
And that's difficult. You need to know that. You need to remind yourself that constantly in order to make it happen. No one walked in this door and wanted Belial. No one walked in this door and wanted Barbara Unleashed. So I need to make those people leave with it. And how do I do that?
Yep, and man, you carry your, and Chuck knows this, and he just talked about this, and you carry your life into that show, and sometimes there is. I'll be honest, I got to November, December, and I was like, there were just a few shows that had gotten so bad that I was almost desperate to get back on the road to be able to make enough to cover Christmas presents, you know? Because there were a couple. Not only was it that there were a couple bad shows, but you have to start investing in 2019 for 2020, and suddenly you're like, how am I going to pull off all these Christmas gifts? And people don't realize that. Plus injuries. Oh my God! I mean, this year I've had broken toes. I had a serious vocal injury that wound up almost stopping me from being able to talk. There was a point where I had reached out to a medical professional, and they were like, if you don't get better, you're going to have to go in for an MRI, and you might need surgery. I should have probably gone to the emergency room, but I had a show that day, so what did I do? And I remember talking to you about this. I heard it the day before a show. I couldn't even swallow at first. I finished the ICR that day, and you can go back and watch it. I can barely talk by the end of it. I lost my voice more thoroughly. I went to a show for 3 days. Horrible show. I don't care. It was the Ancient City Comic Con. And I'm belting out what I can. I'm holding up signs. I'm doing my best to make it. Richard Rivera, the saint he is, came by and constantly wrote me notes to hold up. I did make sales. Everyone I talked to was so appreciative because they saw how much it hurt to talk. And I always talked to them. When they came and stopped at my table, I didn't fish that show. You know what I mean? But when someone stopped and talked to me, I talked to them. Hey. You can hear Jax in the background. He's shooting me with Nerfs. And I've taken Jax to how many shows, You actually happened to not be with me at the show. Jax was with his mom away on vacation. But Jax is like a staple at the show, and he always comes first. I've walked away from my table, walked away from sales. It's actually why I share my table so much now, because I anticipate him being with me, and as a single dad, that's part of the world. So when we're going to these conventions, I don't think promoters think of that enough of the time. I know there's some great promoters like Tom Rapu, who does the Daytona Comic Con out here. I think Reed Pop really thinks about that. I'm sure there's some Texas shows I know you're excited about that really think about their people. Raleigh Comic Con up in North Carolina, I know they came around and talked to you, and they wanted to know what you were doing. I don't think enough creators do that. Not creators, promoters do that. And I'm hoping GreaterCon will not put pressure, but remind them what they're doing. Because I think there were a lot of bad, and we're seeing this now, fallout in different conventions. Even over your way, there's some drama about a show that can't pay off. They're in debt now for a 2-year cycle, trying to pay back to a local thing. But they're doing it right. I'm not going to piss on shit on them because they're not disappearing. They said, hey, we made a mistake. We screwed up.
Yeah.
And they're out there trying to make it better now,
Yeah, and I'm going to call them out because for a good thing. And that was Alamo City Comic Con that did that out of San Antonio. They had some issues. And this year what they ended up doing is they couldn't do it because they owed for 2 years. So instead, they did a street market so that they didn't have to pay for anything, and all of the money that came in then went to them paying off their debts, which I thought was really smart. And I could go, okay, cool. You guys, I get it. We've all been in debt and had to figure things out, and you guys are doing it like anyone else. Good for you.
Yeah, and that's why GreaterCon is so important, because we could talk about Alamo and say, hey, look, they admitted they screwed up, and while other people were burying them, I remember Chuck had said something nice about them that I got to share, and that I saw their creators kind of talk and stop and go, well, wait, just because you're in debt, does that make you bad? I'm in debt. I'm a creator and I'm in debt. Doesn't make me a bad person. You know, things happen, and I think that Alamo will survive because people talked about it and shared it. And I think that's the power of Greaticon right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're just going to take a pause here, and we're going to be right back with a different video. And me and Chuck won't actually go anywhere, but you guys will. You have to look for the other video about IndieAdvocates.com.